So I think we'll get started. Thanks.
I have a note-taking question. Can I ask something really quick?
Yeah.
I record who's present for the meeting from the HRC, but do I record who's present from the public?
If you can, sure.
Yeah. Okay, I will do my best. Tell me your names, if and when you are contributing.
Okay. So thank you everyone for joining us. Before we get started, I want to, before we get to kind of what is the focus of this meeting, which is the racial justice conversation, I do want to address an incident that happened involving the Human Rights Commission. If you'll allow me to read a statement. At a recent Human Rights Commission subcommittee meeting, participants engaged in dialogue that was inappropriate, hurtful, and the antithesis of the Wakefield Human Rights Commission's mission. I am deeply troubled by and sorry for what was said, and have personally spoken with each person involved. They are aware of the pain caused by their actions and are sincerely sorry. As a commission, we have worked hard to actively and vocally initiate community conversations around diversity, inclusion, and bias. As chair, I will commit that the commission will be taking some time to look inward, at our own assumptions, processes, and biases. As Sunday's marches reinforce, this is arguably the most important time in our history for strong human rights and social justice voices in action. The Wakefield Human Rights Commission hopes to continue to be part of that effort. So thank you. And again, I am deeply sorry for what has happened. And I apologize to all of the people that were affected in the video. And I also really, really hope that people can understand that we make mistakes as human beings and we apologize for it and we make it right. And that we can hopefully move forward from this incident and be able to do the work that the Human Rights Commission has been doing for so long. So with that, I would love to open it up to any public participation. So if you want to raise your hand on the participants website, if anybody wants to say anything, go right ahead. I will, or you can, if I can unmute you, or if you can unmute yourself, that's fine. If not, let me know. All right, so with no public participation, I want to go down to the third item on our agenda, which is the conversation around anti-racism and racial justice plans that we would like to try and look into for the Human Rights Commission. So I had asked some of the other commissioners to come with their ideas and wanted to talk with you about some of my own. One of the things that I have been doing and has really energized me, especially in light of the demonstrations that have been going on around the country. I've been reaching out to as many members of the community, members of color in the community, to talk with them, not to educate me, because that's on me, but to talk about what their experiences have been here in Wakefield, and whether it's with police or broader than that. And I've had some really, really uplifting and wonderful conversations that have helped shape a little bit of what direction I think it would be great for us to go in. Just to give you a few examples, we've talked, one of the biggest things that I have heard in my several conversations so far is a desire to feel more integrated into the community, because I think a lot of the people of color in our community, particularly the black people in our community, is that they feel like they're standing on their own individual islands, and they don't know about other families or members of the community who share the same experiences as they do. And they also feel like with this being a small town and so many people having grown up here or lived here for a long time, that when they interact with various bodies around town, they are still seen as, I don't know if outsiders is the word that captures it, but they're seen, they don't have that familiar relationship. And that's one of the things that they would really love to see more of. So some suggestions that they had were like a meet and greet with the police, and a meet and greet with the school department or the school committee, with the superintendent's office, with other bodies in town that they may interact with. Another thing that they had talked about is having more connection with other, particularly within the school system, of having more connection with other families who have Black and brown children, because there's a shared experience there that they feel that would be really helpful and really supportive for them, so that they can have that network of people to talk about experiences, both good and bad, as they go through the school system. So that was just a really energizing conversation to have with a lot of people. And another was just more of a familiarity with neighbors. There was one person that I spoke with who talked about his nervousness in going for a walk around his neighborhood, because he still feels like he gets those looks of, do you live here or do you belong here? And he said it's almost to the point where he feels like before he goes for a walk, he needs to call the police and say, this is where I live, this is the street that I'm on, this is what I'm wearing, in case you get any calls. I'm just walking around my neighborhood. I just want to give you a heads up. So, and I thought that was just really telling, and just really captured that need to feel like they were part of the community, and that it's not, I think, I don't want to over talk it, but so that was just the start of the conversations that I've had. So from those conversations, I think it's really important that we reach out to the school department and talk with them about, share some of these ideas with them and put them in touch, instead of speaking for them, put them in touch with the families, with biracial and families of color, who can facilitate that get together, so that they can, in that communication, so that they can convey their experiences that they've had. So I really see the Human Rights Commission as being a facilitator of communications, and trying to increase the familiarity in the community of people of color. So I am happy to hear thoughts and suggestions from other commissioners, and please feel free to speak up.
I have a question. Had anyone you've spoken to who was new to the community attended any of the 101 sessions that the town has?
I didn't ask them specifically, so I'm not sure. I'm not sure, but that's certainly a good way of reaching out and making them aware of kind of what the town has to offer, and familiarizing them with the town, and the town with them.
And perhaps if they wanted to attend one of those things, we could offer, it sounds almost a buddy to go with them, so that they have an entree with somebody who's already in the community to introduce them maybe to the others and talk to them about what they're hearing. I mean, I'm new to the town too, relatively, 18 years. And I still walk around and people look at me like, who's that strange woman? And I walk all the time. So right. There's a lot of that, even for white people in Wakefield, if you're not connected to the schools or churches. But I can imagine how much more difficult it would be if you didn't look like me or you.
Right. Right. Thank you, Sherry. Amy, go ahead.
Yeah, so I usually am at the police table at the 101 nights, and we definitely had a lot of new residents the last 2 times that we were there who appeared to be people of color. But what about doing a 101 night geared or just towards the people of color in our community, and have some of the local departments there, so that we could kind of do like a meet and greet, like a 101 kind of just for them? Do you think that would be something they'd like, or do you think they'd want something more one-on-one with just the police department and maybe just the fire department and just the school.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think that's a great idea. I think if anyone on here wants to answer that, please let me know, or we can reach out in offline conversations. I don't want to put anyone on the spot, but I think that's a great idea and a great start. I think we need to think about it. I mean, get in touch with Town Hall and figure out how we can reach out to that community to see how we can spread the word.
Suggestion there from the police side.
I'm sorry, I'm having a hard time hearing you. Is anyone else?
Yeah, it's coming through all kinds of muddled. I'm thinking that's still separating people, and it's not really getting at the source of the problem, which is the people who are looking at the people of color in our community as if they're strangers and threats. It's more about how we're looking at people who don't look like us. I mean, yes, we want to be welcoming, and we want to educate people about what this really lovely community has to offer. But I'm kind of concerned about having a separate but equal. That doesn't sound right to me.
Mm-hmm.
Maria,
Oh,
sorry.
Go ahead,
I'm sorry. I joined the meeting late, so I was going to ask Maria, since I'm not on the commission and a member of the public, can I chime in and provide some thoughts, or
Sure.
should I reach out to commissioners? Okay. Well, first, I know many people in this call, but there's several I don't know. My name is Tarae Howell. I live in town. I moved to Wakefield with my wife several years ago, and I believe in 2016 in June. So we're actually about to hit 4 years. I think I came in midway through Maria's comments about ways in which we can integrate particularly residents of color more into the Wakefield community. And I will say that's something that my wife and I are really, really focused on. We have lived here for 4 years. Wakefield is really nice. Everyone's really nice to us, but we found, at least in the first 2 years, it took us a bit of time to build connections and relationships in town. I honestly think the first time I met a lot of residents was when I was invited to speak at the HRC's MLK Day event last year, and that, like, actually meeting people there was the starting point for me feeling comfortable going out to different events in town. So one of the ideas that we have been thinking, at least in our household, is like to find a way to have events where we encourage people of color in town to attend. I agree with Sherry. I don't like the idea of it being, and this is just my personal opinion, it being solely for people of color in town. I think if the Human Rights Commission is sponsoring, for example, a meet and greet with the police commissioner, that should be open to everyone who's interested in the chief of police. Everyone in town should be invited to attend, but I think that there might be some constituents who would feel more comfortable attending if it's something that's sponsored by the HRC. And other folks I was thinking of, and Maria may have already touched on this before I jumped on, the superintendent of the schools, the town administrator. I had a conversation with someone several weeks ago because I was interested in one of the committees in town, and the person asked me, did you speak to the town administrator about this? I remember thinking, like, oh no, like I part of the reason why I didn't do that is because, like, I never had a chance to meet him, and it's not his fault or anyone else's fault, but I think the more we foster opportunities for this population to meet folks in town, then it can help in terms of having us feeling a bit more integrated. Because I think that the climate, things that's going on now nationally, like, I don't think we have those issues in Wakefield. I think really the challenge for at least African-American community here is, at least from our perspective, it seems like there aren't a lot of us, one, but two, we're sort of sparsed out. We don't know who is who. And I think that if we can find a way to bring folks into, integrate us more into town, that would be very helpful. And we can use the HRC as a way to do that. So that's my thoughts. And if anyone has any questions or anything.
Thanks, Tarae.
So often, I know because I work with all volunteer organizations, I work with trade associations, it takes a specific invitation, because most people are not people who raise their hands naturally. obviously people on this commission are, because we all wanted to be nominated and we asked to be, but not everybody is comfortable raising their hand to volunteer. And if the town, like I said, is there some kind of welcoming committee or some way that we could team up and pair up with people who are feeling outside and alienated? I mean, I raise my hand and I'll do it. I would like to meet your family and I would like to know them better, because having come from a much more, I grew up in Brooklyn and I lived in Roslindale for many, many years before I moved to Wakefield. And I love Wakefield, but its lack of diversity wears on me. And I would like to meet people different than I am. So I wish we could have some kind of forum for actually encouraging socialization between people, because that's the only way we're going to know more about each other and people are going to overcome biases and fears. And we all have biases, even the best of us do.
Sherry, I really loved what you said a couple of minutes ago about like a big piece of this puzzle is how white people are responding to people of color. So I appreciate that Wakefield may not have sort of police brutality scandals and things like that, certainly. And, you know, I think that there is bias alive in all of us. And in a place that is so like predominantly white, I think about that a lot. I think about that bias and how that manifests itself in a community where there's like such a predominance of whiteness. And so I wonder about the HRC and whether we could have a role in, like, for example, there's a small group of folks, an ever-growing group of folks, I will say, phrase it positively, a group of folks in town who have been convening these classes. Actually, Jen maybe wants to speak about it, or I don't know, you tell me what you want to speak about. But Sherry and I both participated in a class that Jen helped to teach this past winter, I guess.
It was just before everything got shut down.
And it's, you know, it's a class, it's a group for white folks to learn about history, examine internal bias, like start to do some of that uprooting work, which is lifelong work, but this is kind of a beginning space for that. And so that work is already happening in town, and I wonder, would that be something that the HRC could help co-sponsor or publicize, you know what I mean, be like involved in that in some kind of way? Because I think that piece of like, it's white people's work to work on our own stuff. I think that's a key point.
Okay, what is freestyle? Correct again. Fonts and listing for 2000. Answer.
I think that's a great idea. Because I'm always looking for that restaurant that's open later on a Sunday.
Who is speaking? I don't see.
No, I think it was, they went on mute.
Very
It's fine.
faint.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, Benny, I can just speak to the course. You know, I took it myself. It's basically based off the, there's some other groups that run similar programs, White People Challenging Racism and Things Through Surge, which is standing up for racial justice. And so it was a locally run class by a local citizen, and I signed up for it. And it was, you know, examining what it means to be white and what are the implicit biases and things that we might have just from our upbringing that we catch in the air, not that we're necessarily taught, but how we're raised and how, you know, what are the things that kind of come into how we look at the world, right? And then start to interrupt that with, you know, diving into some of the history of redlining and GI Bills and things that have caused some of the systemic racism. And it's a 5-week class, 2 hours a week. So it's 10 hours worth of work and reflection and discussion.
And there's homework.
There's homework between too, yeah. So, you know, I think that's a great thing to offer more broadly and more frequently if we can do that, and knowing that not everyone's going to have the time to be able to commit to that or want to necessarily, or even if they do want to have the time. So I think
I think that could be part of a solution, but certainly not. And not that you were suggesting that be the be all end all at all, Benny, but just knowing I think we need to make some things that are a little more, maybe more accessible as well.
This has to be a multi-pronged approach.
Yeah.
There has to be the conversations about whiteness that Benny and I went to, and it was excellent. And I thank Jen for putting all that effort into leading us. There also has to be that welcoming part where we actually, like I said, even if it means, it sounds tribal, buddy up with families that are different than ourselves to help them meet other people and become involved in town. And I think the third prong has to do with youth, with the young people. Attitudes are already changing. Kids are much more aware already, but they still live in a world of white privilege. And perhaps there's some way of addressing this. And I know that some of you are already doing this with, I have grandchildren, I don't have young children at home, but a lot of people are talking to their kids, but how much do they themselves even understand about the depth of our white privilege and how it shapes the way we look at the world and the choices we make? So, as I said, there should be 3 prongs here, at least, if not many more. There's a lot to do. And even in this tiny town, there's so much to do.
Deputy Chief, you had your hand raised.
Yes, you can hear me. Is my audio okay?
Oh, no.
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 Not great.
Not working.
You sound like a monster. Grovelly.
I know. Sign back in.
Okay. Peggy, go ahead. Hold on.
I was just thinking, I'm really interested in that 5-week class. I know I have 4 girls, 2 are in the high school, and they're very much want to be involved in a solution, and I don't know how to help them become a solution except for, having good morals in our own home. But we are back at the Walton next year with our 5-year-old, our surprise baby. And I was thinking that maybe a lot of this work could be done through enrichment programs for the kids. We spend so much money and raise so much money for the kids to have all these wonderful enrichment programs. Maybe that's a way to kind of break in as well. And parent partnership for adults. They have money to be able to have speakers for the adult population.
Those are great ideas. Thanks, Peggy.
Even programs, I know that there probably is stuff online even, of how helping parents talk to their own children about racism and bias. And again, that I have to keep saying that the whole notion of the white privilege that we take for granted, we don't even think about. So helping the parents, because the solutions are going to come with people far younger than I am. I mean, I marched in the 60s. That was a long time ago. So, and it didn't make enough of a difference. We're still working at it.
It's also on my mind a lot about, I appreciate, Tarae, your insights and input that you shared, and Maria, that you had reached out to some folks leading up to this meeting specifically to get feedback from folks of color in town. But it's certainly on my mind, like, I don't want to be paternalistic about it and be like, oh, this is what like Black people in Wakefield need. Like, here, the HRC is going to do a thing and fix stuff for Black people. And so I wonder also if a part of this process could be sort of taking a step back and having, whether it's like a subcommittee or something that's really focusing on like outreach and listening and gaining some direction from folks of color in town who tell us, like, this is what I need. Like, I don't need you to tell me what I need. I'm going to tell you what I need, like, because I think I worry about us being being an all-white body deciding what people of color in town need. So I think maybe a step before anything else that looks more like that, kind of continuing the work that you already started doing, Maria, would be an important part of this.
How do we even identify the people we can reach out to?
This is Cynthia Davis. I'm not a member of the commission, but I don't know that what we I think what we can focus on maybe is what everyone in our community needs, not just what this group needs or that group needs, but what does everybody in the community need, because we're all part of it. And so what do our community members need to be educated, and not just the young kids, but everyone. And I know that, as was mentioned early on in the meeting, that, you know, we're here because we are motivated to be here, and we need education, and we need to know as well, but the people who aren't here are really also, we need to be able to them as well. And what do we do? How do we have those programs where there's more education in the community about differences and race and these uncomfortable conversations, so that we've set the stage so that these conversations can happen.
Thank you, Cynthia.
After you said that, I'm thinking we should have a whole series called Uncomfortable Conversations.
Yeah.
And facilitate that, you know, and see what happens, and hope that it leads to better understanding.
Yeah. And I think, yeah, as part of those uncomfortable conversation, there's definitely going to be moments where we stumble and moments where we say the wrong thing, and just understanding that in ourselves, like admitting when we make a mistake, and learning from that mistake instead of getting defensive, but also having the humility to keep moving forward and to keep learning without getting so scared that you feel like you can't have these conversations anymore, because that's where we really reach a roadblock, that we have to keep trying to have these conversations, and the more that we talk about it, the easier it gets. Lieutenant Calabrese, do you want to try again? I don't want to put you on the spot.
I think he's still trying to sign in.
Oh, okay.
I wonder too how we use points in the community, high visibility areas like the library, and where they have broad and diverse sort of catchments in terms of people who will use those services, and how we can get the conversation started there.
I think I saw Deputy Chief Calabrese come back on video. I don't know. We can check back with him again.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes.
Oh my gosh.
Sorry about that. No, that's okay.
That was I switched computers, but I'm back on now.
Yep.
All right, so I probably missed a little bit, but I heard I heard Tarae talking, and Amy was talking about the Wakefield. Amy mentioned the Wakefield 101, which is for new residents. And I was thinking, after what some people were saying, if we built on that for like a Wakefield 201, so it's not for new residents, it's just for people that are already here, but they want to meet more people, and it can be the whole community. And we can try to get more people and more inclusion. And then we can have and that could be an opportunity for the police chief to be here, the superintendent, Mr. Mayo, the fire chief. and they could talk to all those people in one venue. And it might be an opportunity to, you know, kind of build on that 101, which is really for the new residents. It was just kind of a thought I have.
Yeah, I think that's a great, well, I like that idea because I think the 101 started after I'd already lived here for several years, and I was like, I want to go to this thing. It sounds great
Right.
to be able to do things, and it didn't feel like it was for me.
Yeah, that's a great suggestion. Thank you.
Nice. Sorry it took me that long to
It's
go through.
okay.
That's okay. It was worth waiting for.
The question is, how do we get the people who are not feeling included to come to this?
Right.
To not be shy about coming to this. How do we make it so welcoming?
Yeah. I mean, I think there's questions too about not making it so big that you can't meet people and talk to people too. So I think, I don't know if the 101 has like a limited number of spots or something, or if you would sort of limit it and maybe have like one a month or something where you could sign up. And so I don't know that we even have a venue where we could have like 500 people show up. But I think that's a question
College
of,
gym.
oh, that's true.
And you could have a combination of information tables about community groups and then just people socializing
Yeah.
in the middle. So you have both.
Yeah.
But I think you'd have to have some real ice-breaking type of activities. You can tell that I run associations, so that you get people interacting better. Because like I said, people are shy. You have to help them interact. It could be, you know, a game that you do with name badges, something. It could be at different intervals during that 201 where suddenly everyone has to stop and then they have to turn away from where they are and look for someone else who is wearing a different color, you know, something like that. Any kind of activity at all that forces people a little bit out of their comfort zone and helps them meet other people, because not everybody is extroverted.
Thanks, Sherry. First, Jen, and then Amy.
Hi, everyone. I just wanted to say hello. My name is Jen. I'm a community member, and this is my husband, Manny. This is the first call that we are participating in. And I just wanted to say that I think there would be a lot of interest in a 201 program, and I don't necessarily see the challenge being cultivating that interest, but more promoting it for individuals in the community who aren't in the school system with young children yet and not a part of another kind of ingrained community like a church group. It can be hard to identify what events are happening in the community and just stay plugged into that. So we kind of stumbled upon this on Facebook, which I think is a really powerful platform, especially now. But any creative ideas to kind of get these events more publicized, I think will help draw in more people.
Fantastic. Thank you so much. Just while we are talking about that, maybe we could brainstorm different ways that we can get the word out to the community if we were to do a 201 like this. So just definitely Facebook, the local newspapers, the Item, the Patch, the town email. I don't know if people are subscribed to town emails, but if you go on the town website, you can sign up for notifications. So that's a good way, and that's, you know, in terms of emergency notifications or any meetings of particular boards, you can sign up for which boards you want notification of meetings for, or general announcements, you can sign up for all of that. So if you haven't signed up for those, I definitely encourage you, because yeah, those are really helpful. But what other avenues of communication can people think of?
Jen McDonald's a great resource.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, she's excellent at that type of stuff.
All right.
How about local businesses that have the old-fashioned flyer board, announcement boards, cravings, and things like that? Because everybody goes to ice cream.
Yep. Peggy, you also had your hand up, and I'm sorry. Back to you, Amy. I'm sorry.
We've used the DPW with the walk to school signs.
Mm-hmm.
We could have something like that downtown. They have the big banners across the middle of the street. I don't know what kind of cost is involved with that, but I know the Wakefield Chamber is also very involved and really committed to our community. They might be able to push something out through all the businesses.
Mm-hmm. That's a great idea. Thanks, Peggy. Vanessa.
Hi there. Sorry, I was trying to figure out how to do that.
That's okay.
Also, yeah, I'm not a member of the board. Vanessa is my husband, Dan. We've been here for a while. I think we missed the first 101 as well. So excited with the idea of a 201 if that's something like that's possible. One thing I was thinking about is the farmers market. I don't know if it's happening right now this year, but I always walk around, look at the tables. I know there's usually an HRC table, but if there was some sort of welcoming type table there, that might be useful.
That's a great suggestion. And just to answer your question, the farmers market is opening, but on a much more limited basis. So
it might not be
this year, yeah, unfortunately this year they had to, the table where they had various community groups or nonprofits, they don't have a table this year, but that doesn't mean that we can't do it next year. So thank you for the suggestion.
Can I ask a follow-up question for that, Maria and Vanessa? Sorry. So obviously, because first you said, oh, could you be at the farmers market? And I was thinking like, we are at the farmers market, but I think, based on the schedule, we're only like once every 6 weeks or something like that. So I just wanted to understand more what you said, like just a resident welcome table I'm trying to think of like what our role as the HRC would be in that versus like having our own table, which we have every once in a while. So I'm just trying to understand.
I'm not sure.
Yeah, that's okay. You don't have to know the answer. We can talk about that further. I just was trying to figure out the differentiation.
Yeah, I didn't think I had.
No. Was not blaming by any means.
I'll throw in my 2 cents too while we've got the window around us. We've been here about 5 years, and almost 6 years. I do find it to be a very tough community to break into. It does feel like it's very sort of tight-knit with the people who've been here for a very long time. We do have children who are in the school system, but it still feels like there's a degree of separation. So I can only imagine if you're already feeling like you might not be accepted, it might be even harder. So I think we need to get a little more creative than maybe the traditional venues. Maybe there's something else, like even the newspaper. I find a little, that's okay. It's all right if it's being recorded. I find the local newspaper a little offensive sometimes when I read the little comments, and we actually stopped getting it. I couldn't stomach reading the little commentaries that are in there. And I find that kind of stuff a little alienating, and that would be, a channel that could be used to socialize things. But if all those channels have their own little way of turning you off, it's hard to find new channels. I don't know if anybody knows what I'm alluding to there, but
100%. I think that the newspaper, knowing the columnists that they have, it's not really a welcoming venue for people who feel marginalized.
Or even, I don't feel particularly marginalized, but
right.
I can't stand it.
And you want to support knowing how the messages that they've put forth about marginalized individuals and groups.
Right. I've been offended.
Right. Yeah. It's an offensive piece, and it is every time it shows up.
Thank you for that input. Amy, sorry, you had raised your hand a long time ago.
Oh, yeah. Oh, am I back on? Okay. No, I was just going to suggest or mention, we usually in the fall, we do Coffee with a Cop at Brothers. And there's so many people signed on, I can't see everyone's faces, but I'm Amy Rando and I'm the Family Services Officer in Wakefield. I apologize for not introducing myself, and I sit on the Human Rights Commission. So normally we do it, a weekday, so it's not always well attended. I know a lot of people are working. But maybe doing something like that, having Coffee with a Cop, so people could kind of meet and greet with some of us, some of us specifically. That's a thought that I had. Maybe we could do something like that. I know not everyone's going to work and working from home. I don't know how much longer that's going to last, but that was just a thought I had. That's all.
Yeah, I like that. Yeah. Thanks, Amy.
I think the various times for that could be better, because I know, it's usually when I'm commuting to work to Boston when those have happened in the past.
Just to pivot a little bit in terms of one idea, and this is from my own experience with my kids in the schools. When for Martin Luther King Day, the program that that they had brought home, that they filled out in one of my children's grades, they talked about Martin Luther King, but it was kind of a disappointing distillation of his life and his message, to the point that it said generally Martin Luther King believed everyone should be treated equally. There was no mention of skin color. There was no mention of the struggle that they had gone through. It was just so bland in its description, and I think that was definitely an avenue. That's a real avenue that we could use to work with. I mean, there are fantastic programs out there that maybe meeting with the teachers or the superintendent's office and saying, for Martin Luther King Day or for Black History Month, sharing some of those resources, because God knows teachers are incredibly busy, and I don't deny that, and I know that they're overwhelmed just trying to keep up with everything. So as parents of children in the school system, maybe sharing the resources that we find that could be more helpful in helping our kids understand all of the aspects of the racial justice movement, whether it means to be white, how to be an anti-racist, all of those things.
Some other ways that people get the word out in town is through the gas and electric bills, the municipal department's newsletter.
Mm-hmm.
I know that the town council has a newsletter now, so there are, there's mailings that we might be able to get in on that go to everybody in town in terms of announcing programs, because everyone gets those.
That's a good idea. Thank you.
And I know we can't go around and stuff things in mailboxes because that's not legal, but from canvassing around even my neighborhood, I know that it's fairly easy to put flyers indoors if we wanted to really beat the pavement and get the word out. And I don't know why my mic doesn't turn off. I'm done talking. Finally.
That's okay. Peggy, go ahead.
I don't know. I'm so new to this particular committee, but maybe reaching out to the lovely ladies on the Metco board. I've worked with them on a couple different spots, but I bet they have a great pulse on how we should proceed into a lot of these things.
Yep. Yeah, I agree. And a couple days, we were getting, as the protests around the country were increasing in number and size, and we were getting a number of requests of doing some sort of action. And I had reached out to the Metco director, and she told me that the students, the 3 high school students, were leading something. And so I thought it was best for the students to take the lead on that. But I did express to her in that conversation that I would love to partner with them to figure out, to create more ideas and more conversations around this. So I definitely plan to keep that conversation going with them.
Can we work with the library to see if they would be interested in putting it out or co-sponsoring programs or discussion groups or anything like that? Yep,
we absolutely can. And just for those of you who aren't as familiar with the Human Rights Commission, we started 5 years ago, and we are definitely no strangers to having the difficult conversations around racial justice. We've done, we started the Martin Luther King program. The town recognized Martin Luther King program in the school each year at the Galvin Middle School. we have done, we did a book discussion around The Hate U Give at the library, the book The Hate U Give. We also, we did a 2-speaker forum partnering, if I remember correctly, I think it was with the UU Church, where we had the leader of Black Lives Matter from Boston, and then we also had a man talking about understanding whiteness and what it means and white privilege. So these are definitely conversations and programs that we have put on before, and we love doing them, and we're happy to continue doing those, whether it's partnering with the library, and they've been a great partner in the past, and I hope that they would continue to do programs like that with us. So absolutely, we can continue doing that.
I love the book discussion on The Hate U Give, and I would love to see a lot more of that, you know, maybe one a month or one a quarter or something like that.
Okay. Yep, I'm happy to pass that along to the library and see.
No one mentioned that you can get the word out through our different faith organizations in town too.
Yep. All right.
And in fact, they might be willing to allow us to use their space for some of these different programs as well.
Mm-hmm.
It would be very appropriate.
Jen and Manny, I don't want to put you on the spot, but since, you know, you said you weren't, if we say faith organizations or through the schools and stuff, obviously that's not going to reach you. Do you have any other ideas or thoughts on like where you would potentially be, see this information so you know when it's happening?
I mean, between social media platforms, like I don't really see any specific Wakefield government or HRC on Instagram. I know, just like my wife Jen had mentioned, I found out that they were marching yesterday by accident. I kind of actually, it was through Twitter, through a student tweeting about it, and then it brought me to the HRC's page and they said that we're marching at 12:30 today. And then I saw that the meeting was also happening today, so we wanted to do more like fly on the walls today just to see what it all involved. But I think the business boards, people putting flyers on businesses. I know gyms are closed right now, but when gyms open back up, I don't know if I know the owner of Barefit Training. He put stuff up. I don't know when Mike's Gym is going to open up again. Yeah, you have any other ideas?
I was just going to echo what Sherry had already suggested, but I think most residents pay a monthly bill to the Wakefield Gas and Light Department, mm-hmm. and we've definitely stumbled upon some really helpful flyers that have just been included within our bill. So I think that would be a great medium as well.
Thank you.
Thanks. Vanessa, so your hand up.
Hi, that was me.
Oh, sorry.
We're both Vanessa right now.
Right.
I was going to suggest, and it's sort of building on the comments of putting flyers around, but instead of trying to get people to go to something new or go to an education program, integrating the educational messages and positive messages or whatever they happen to be into the critical path that everybody's walking through anyway. So instead of having them go to a program, put the messaging, put the things you want them to see and hear every day up in the shops, up on the flyers. So make the community the lesson space. You know, put the messages up in volunteer organizations. Have links to websites that might carry appropriate messaging, or just have simple messaging just up and around. It's kind of like product placement, but when you're surrounded by and entrenched in messaging, it sinks in, and you have a choice whether that's going to be positive messaging or negative messaging. Unfortunately, we have, not necessarily Wakefield specifically, but a lot of toxic environments where we're surrounded by messaging that doesn't do us any good. we can change that narrative and change the messaging that people are being surrounded by, and not just ask people to take another step and to go to another thing, but bring the messaging right to them right up front and make those micro interactions educational and teaching moments.
I love that. That's it.
There's a billboard outside the library that they use to announce their programs, but that would be a great place. It's a very public place to push a message forward, a changing message.
Yeah, churches do it all the time.
That's right.
So they have a message on their board that says something.
Yes.
You know, we tune them out after a while, but if you're soaked in it, if the messages appear all over the place, like the hate has no home here message, you see that over and over and over again, it's going to sink in at some level. Unfortunately, we have, you know, McDonald's signs and political signs and whatever, and a whole bunch of other noise that's also competing for that attention, but we have to participate in that noise if the message is going to be heard.
Great,
there was a digital sign used on one side of Main Street when they changed it to one way by the Commons. Is that owned by the town?
I think it's owned by the DPW.
Could we use that?
Yeah. I mean, it's worth
It's a
asking.
very large digital sign. Right. And they used it also to remind people, and they're still not wearing masks, and they're still not social distancing, that when they're walking the lake, they're supposed to be adhering to those precautions.
They also have, they have the 6 different kiosks around the lake and in the public spaces. And I think you can only have like a regular 11 by 7 size piece of paper, but you could post, you know, either different sites or messages on that. And I know you just submit that to the town hall and they review it, and then they could put it up in the kiosks around town for all those walking the lake.
Well, downtown there's kiosks now too. So there are a lot of places to post things. You just have to be careful that they are not so many words that people can't just look at it and see the message right away. It has to be, you know, very focused, very pointed.
Kelly Cormier, I just wanted, you had your hand raised.
Yeah, so I'm Brad. That's Kelly. She's in charge.
Hi.
But piggybacking on Vanessa's husband's or boyfriend's, whatever the situation is. So one thing that you guys said about targeting messaging and sneaking things into the Wakefield Gas and Light company outreach, like the great thing about that is that it's a captive audience. And that's one thing that we haven't talked too much about, because if, like, Kelly and I moved here 6 months ago, we didn't know about the Wakefield 101 stuff. And the thing is that if we're relying on situations to create themselves or us to be able to market something about a training or something like that, you're going to get the same 5 people that show up to the same 5 things every single time. There's going to be chunks of people who are inconvertible on both ends of the spectrum. And then there's going to be a wide swatch of people that you can get by stumbling upon in a football game or by some other organization having a moment like this that you can go and kind of insert yourself into. So my question is really, and forgive me for not being familiar with this committee or scope of influence or anything like that.
All right.
When you think about different things that can happen from a programmatic level, things like what's going on in the school systems, do we have classes about diversity so that a big chunk of those people who can be kind of changed one way or the other or can be a little influenced for the better, how can you use that captive audience opportunity of a classroom session or having a speaker come in? How can those programs be kind of amplified a little bit? And other things, just as one other tidbit on mailers, let's make, like, a great comment was how to make sure that messaging is impactful. Can that messaging be, here's an example, and as simple as this, it's not selling you anything, it's not trying to get a call to action, it's just a briefing note. This is one way that someone who is not white had a rougher day today. It can be that simple, and it's about being able to identify with something. It's instead of being, let's go to an event and have another meeting on something, let's actually take action and hopefully get a sense of understanding.
I would just also like to chime in.
Go ahead.
Succinctly.
Yep. Yeah. Oh, it's okay. Yep.
Like you said, we only moved here 6 months ago. My sister's lived here for probably 2, maybe almost 3 years now. And I would agree with some of the other sentiments that we don't have kids in the school system. We don't have any community like interaction other than social media, which is how I found out about this meeting. Mostly as a response to like my own digging, because as I think some people have indicated, the community groups for Wakefield are not the most positive place. And so I sought out like, okay, so where in this town are people having appropriate discussions or having productive discussions? And I stumbled across you guys, but I think somebody mentioned something about the farmer's market. That's something that like I, as someone who doesn't get the town paper, who doesn't really, you know, follow more than what I see on social media, can stumble across. And so I think finding opportunities for people who are not necessarily within the school system would be really helpful. And I think you guys have already presented some really good ideas, but I just wanted to kind of share, as people who are relatively new to the town, it is very difficult to find information about events that are happening, about things that are going on. And obviously we walked into COVID situation, so I'm sure it's not programming as usual, but you know, like you guys were talking about Wakefield 101 and we moved here 6 months ago and I had to Google what you were talking about because I had no idea. Yep. And that for me is kind of disappointing because I'm like, did I miss this information? How is it getting transmitted? So maybe just looking at the channels that we're using to access people. Right.
I mean, I think we don't organize the 101. We have a table at the 101. We meaning the Human Rights Commission. It's organized by the town. I think they only do it twice a year, right? It's like a spring and a fall. So you might have, the spring one probably got canceled. So it's not that they've been having it every month and you just never heard about it. It's fairly infrequent. And that could be a suggestion too, to see if those could be something that we could push to ask town council or whoever. I know a lot of people go into that organizing those, but see if those could be done more frequently once we're back to a place where we can all be in public again.
Right. And it also might be worth passing along this suggestion to, even if one isn't scheduled right now, to have information about it on the webpage to say Wakefield does this twice a year. You know, obviously the circumstances right now are not such that they can get together, but keep an eye out for one to be planned as soon as possible, just so that they know that one exists, that this program exists, and to keep an eye out for it. And I just want to reiterate again for anyone that came in late or didn't hear me say this in the part of the meeting, in terms of announcements, another way, if you go on the town website, you can sign up for announcements, from the email announcements. So just wanted to repeat that for anyone. Let's see, Vanessa, you had your hand up again.
I know. I don't want to monopolize.
Oh, no, I didn't mean to be like, again.
Anyway, it doesn't matter. Just in terms of just outreach and trying to get things in front of people, especially new to the town, is it possible to get some information to realtors? Like, do they have packets they give to new people? You know,
right.
It's been a while since I don't remember how that works, but yeah.
Yeah, I don't know, but that's a good.
I received one when we moved here, but that was many, many years ago.
From the realtor or from?
Yes, from the realtor. I got a welcome package with an incredible, it wasn't so much town information as business information, coupons, services that I can tap into.
Right.
And normally a place where you get, at least where I found my information, is the library. And I can't wait until it opens again, because you will all find that that's sort of Wakefield Central. The library is really Wakefield Central.
I was going to say, in the community that I live in, when I moved here 3 years ago, someone actually left a bag on my door. It's very similar to what new residents get at 101. And it had, you know, a few businesses in town had coupons in there. It had information about some of the mental health and substance use services in town, information about different committees. and they dropped it off right on my door. So I thought that was kind of cool. So I went out and I was like, oh, I had a welcome bag. And I know that they do have something somewhat similar at the 101, and people go around and kind of collect materials, but that's a thought that they could, you know, especially during COVID, if they're not going to be hosting an event, that as people move in, they could maybe just leave a bag with some information and little goodies that businesses want to donate. I know I liked it when I saw it on my doorstep.
Thanks, Amy. One other question that I had for people. So I think maybe a week ago, we had posted, we had started posting resources of pieces around anti-racism and different resources, so like books to read and things to watch, and there's just a collection of those. Is there, I'm wondering, beyond posting that to Facebook, and maybe we can pin that to the top of our page, is there another place? I was thinking, obviously, like the first place I'm thinking of is the library, to have a designated section. I know they do kind of monthly displays in the library, but could we have a fixed and permanent section of the library for racial justice resources? And if anybody has any other ideas as to how we can share those resources and information, I would love to hear them. Allison, go ahead.
So I'm a public educator in another district nearby, and our HRC has school liaisons. So there is a liaison from the HRC for each of our schools, and they have, so that could be a way to share resources. I too shared your disappointment with what came home this year for the MLK Junior event, and I did talk to the school about it. And being an educator, I know that, you know, there's not a curriculum that the district puts out for everything, and so often educators are on their own to, you know, pick and choose unless it's, you know, part of the core curriculum. So I think, you know, in addition to any curricula, that people really need training. So if there's any way to help the school identify training sources, you know, I know they're doing a lot, and schools are all doing a lot around this stuff, so it's not for a lack of effort. But I wonder if that's a way to connect directly with the schools. I know we've also co-hosted speakers between the school district and the HRC in the town in which I work, and so there's co-hosted some events, and I think that helped to draw in some more of the families from the school side as well.
Thanks. Checking to see if anybody else. All right. So I just, I know it's been about an hour. If, does anybody else have any thoughts, suggestions, ideas, anything that they want to contribute? Go ahead, Peggy. Oh, all right, hold on.
Did I do it? Did I do it?
Yep.
Sorry.
Yep.
Sorry. I know WCAT is always really helpful with us pushing stuff out. And I'm on the board for Parent University, and I know that would be a great venue to have different lectures and different discussions out there. And I just love the person that said, go through the real estate agents. I think that's the first point of contact as you enter the town. I think that's a great idea. But I have an unruly 5-year-old, so I do have to leave. But thank you so much. This is wonderful, and I'm really happy and grateful to be a part of this. Thanks.
Thanks so much, Peggy. All right. Deputy Chief Calabrese, go ahead.
I was just going to say I've heard a lot, you know, from Tarae talked about how, you know, trying to meet some of the leaders and things like that. And like from my standpoint too, like to hear from those people and people like lived experiences, things like that. And when she just mentioned WCAT, that's kind of what I was thinking. Like, if there was a time where there could, someone like, I know Tom Stapleton was great at facilitating discussions and just hearing from those individuals about their personal experiences and trying to educate all of us a little better. I think I always learn when I hear things like that. So if there were a few people that didn't, not everyone likes being in front of a camera, but a few people that just like to talk about, you know, what some of their life experiences have been, and maybe help, you know, kind of help all of us in that regard.
Mm-hmm. Great, thank you. All right. Okay, anybody else?
I don't know if this hits exactly the mark, but one of the things I had talked about some people with when we were originally talking about, like, would we plan some sort of march or protest, and the thought was, you know, what Maria said earlier about not wanting to run it from our, or maybe it was Benny, like a white centric place, and really taking the lead from people of color, which I think we did. But when we were started batting ideas about, like, what could we do that wouldn't be perceived in the wrong way or something, it was really focusing more on action and not, and also just concerned with social distancing and all that. So it was like, what could we do that would be kind of a safe thing? And thinking about kind of like what we did on the Women's Day, when we all sort of wrote down an action, but like, is there a collective place, whether online or in person in town or somewhere, that we could all like write a commitment down of, like, what are we going to do to fight racial injustice, or what are the things that we're going to do? Is it simple as like teaching your children or reading more diverse authors or whatever that is, but you know, writing to your legislators, all those different things. But like, we could all write, and everybody in the community could contribute like their action to some board somewhere, or some, you know, again, it could be virtual board or a physical board, but that could be something meaningful that could kind of stand up in the community of, like, here's all the actions people are committing to taking.
I think that's a great idea. I think oftentimes when things like, when things hit us like this, what I go to is, what can I do? What is the action? And sometimes you're lost for what that action is going to be. One of the things that I actually emailed or messaged the commission about was, how can I support local Black-owned businesses? You know, tell me what those businesses are so I can, you know, I can do something. And I like that idea. Everybody's action is going to be different. And so whether it is, you know, on the community page, or whether it is at the library, whatever it is, that idea of giving others ideas for, these are the things you can do, these are the actions you can do. I love that.
Yes, and I thought that was a great suggestion, and yes, that is definitely on our to-do list.
Is there an active list of local, like, Black-owned businesses in Wakefield? Is that a thing?
Not that I'm aware of, but I have not checked around extensively yet. But certainly, if there is one, we will post about it on Facebook, and if there is not one, we'll create one.
Yeah, the one thing again, this is through Instagram, I saw somebody had posted that was it the Sheraton on the lake is Black-owned, but that's a little hard to support if you live in Wakefield.
Right.
Gonna get a room for the night. Yeah, if I'd love to know if there is one, and also if there's any way, I'd love to be in communication with the Metco directors too, just to offer whatever I can to students of color, just to let them know that there are other people of color in the community who are older, whatever I can do. So if you can, I can email you after this, or because I don't know who to contact.
Yep. Yeah. You can certainly email me. You can also, I don't know if you're on Facebook, but if you are, the Wakefield Metco program does have a Facebook page. But I'm more than happy to facilitate communication too.
I can say about the Black-owned businesses, I know Boston.com had an article, I think it was on Friday, and the closest businesses that I could find that were open were in Medford and Somerville. There were several places that were closed because of COVID and, just not able to keep their businesses running right now. So that's the best I could get for Wakefield or even the North Shore.
Yeah, I have a friend who's trying to put together a list for the North Shore, but again, it'll be broader than Wakefield. But if we can extract from that a Wakefield list and then republish it here, I think that could be good. Because I've seen some of those other lists too, and it's like Massachusetts Black-owned businesses, and I was looking through, and I'm like, there's no Wakefield, there's no Melrose, there's no Stone on the list. At least on the list. Let's not just say that there aren't any. Right?
Yeah.
And I imagine we could connect with the Chamber of Commerce.
Yeah.
Maybe to
Yeah,
find
that's a good
more
point.
information about that. The Wakefield Linfield Chamber.
Good idea.
Yeah.
Deputy Chief, did you have, I don't know if this is a raised hand from earlier. I didn't want to miss you if you had anything, if you had something else to say.
No, I think that was from earlier.
Okay, sorry. Okay, no worries. All right. Anyone else have anything that they would like to add? Okay. I think this was a really good start. I'm really energized and excited about all of these ideas that everyone's put out there, and I really appreciate your willingness to participate in yet another Zoom meeting. And certainly, as you know, if anything else pops into your head, if you talk with other people who have ideas, please encourage them. And you yourselves, if anything else comes to mind, please feel free to get in touch with us. We have an email. You can get in touch with us through Facebook. The email is whrc@wakefield.ma.us. So please, we would love to hear from you. And, I think we have a lot of different directions we can go in, which is really exciting. So I think between now and next month's meeting, we'll do the work that, we'll do as much work as we're able to in pursuing these different avenues. And certainly, I mean, the reality of the situation is we have had a couple members resign in light of the video incident. So there are fewer of us to do more work. First of all, if any of you want to volunteer to help us with any of these, oh, thank you. Thanks, Benny, for posting the email in the chat. If any of these particular areas really have you fired up and you want to work with us, absolutely. In the coming weeks, there will most likely be announcements going out for vacancies on the WHRC. And if anyone's interested in applying and joining us, we would love to have you. So yeah, thank you all so much. And in terms of the formalities of the meeting, do I have a motion to adjourn?
I make a motion
to adjourn.
Yes.
Okay, and seconded. And I'll just take a quick roll call. Benny?
On the motion to adjourn?
On the motion to adjourn, yeah.
Aye, here, yes, whatever I say.
Okay. Jen?
Aye.
Okay, Sherry?
Yes.
Amy?
Yes.
And yes for myself. Thank you so much, everyone. This was a fantastic conversation. And I hope you all have a great night. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.